sing the blues. Said everybody wanna know why I'm singing the blues. Said I've been around a long time. Yes, I've really paid my dues. When I first got the blues off, they brought me up on a ship. Man was standing over me, and a lot more with a whip, and everybody wanna know why I sing the blues. Said I've been around a long time. Yes, I've really paid my dues.
Would like you to meet the boys from Wide Mouth Mason, and they are Earl Pereira, Sean Varro, and Saffron Javid. I got it right. Good. I was saying just before we started this interview that I hadn't come across your music until we walked in here this evening because this thing was set up at very short notice. But having listened to you setting up your drums, I would actually have bought the CD of a sound check. It's very much my sort of music. I want to ask you a question. You are from Saskatoon, and I remember reading somewhere you saying that you are very sure of where you're from and very much a Canadian band. Is it an advantage or a hindrance being a Canadian band in the present music scene, particularly as you're playing in the States so much?
Well, I think for us growing up, it was a great place to grow up in Saskatoon where we did. I have nowhere really to compare it to because that's the only place we grew up and started a band. But I think lately with a lot of the strides Canadian musicians and bands have been making all around the world, including the US, I think it's really nice now that it's not a selling point anymore to say this is a Canadian band, because to me that always sounded kind of like, okay, let's let the little kids in to play for a while, and okay, we have this Canadian band coming up next. And now it's starting to be where it's just a level playing field, where it's like Canadian music is seen as equally as good as any other kind of music. So I don't know. I guess there might be pros and cons to it, but so far we've had really good experiences playing in the States and anywhere else that we've gone.
I was reading about some of the reviews that you got, and they were really tumultuous reviews. Going back to Saskatoon, you come from 3 different ethnic backgrounds, 3 different musical cultural traditions. Where was the commonality when you all got started?
I think, it's true that we all have our different backgrounds and cultural roots, but in addition to that, growing up in Canada as a so-called first-generation Canadian, which I was, and Earl was as well, you balance it out, and I don't think we paid that much attention to that. I'm very proud of where I'm from, and I try to maintain a connection with that as much as I can, as do each of these individuals. But when we play music, I don't think any of us talk about, well, this kind of has a nice Kashmiri ring to it, or this has a that. That's for us. That's not an issue. That doesn't even exist for us. We're 3 guys that grew up together, that have known each other for a long time, that clicked really well together musically and otherwise, and we were fortunate enough to be able to stick with each other and get some breaks in the industry, and we're lucky to be able to play our own music. That's all it is for us.
Well, sort of sorry you said that in a way, because you sort of answered the question I was going to ask you, which was the fact that East Indian music has become very popular in the Western Hemisphere, and it's influenced a lot of musicians, not least of all the Beatles. And I wondered if there was a possibility that popularity might creep into your music at some point.
I'm a huge fan of it myself, because I grew up in my household. That's all that was played when I was a young child. There'd be qawwalis and ghazals and various assortments of different classical Indian and Pakistani music. So that's all I heard when I was little, and then you start to rebel against that whole thing when you grow up, and I went through my different phases. And now I've found in the last year or 2, I've really gone back to it, especially with people like Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan or the Sabri brothers or Ghulam Ali, or there's countless, And I listen to it a lot. And I don't know that I consciously try to bring that into the group, just like I don't know that either of them try to bring it consciously.
Even if he did, at least he has the connection there too. Like, I'm not going to come into a practice and pull out some Filipino folk music.
Well, I was going to ask you, because I have no idea what Filipino musical roots and traditions are.
It's pretty heavy. I don't know. It's a combination of a lot of different. You got a lot of Spanish influence there, and then some influences that are just islander, like, I don't know, it's a lot of like acoustic guitar is pretty much like the common instrument, and folk songs range from storytelling ones to, the only connection I have to it is in Saskatoon there's every August there's a a thing called Folk Fest, where all different pavilions from different countries are held in different areas of the city, and people have these passports, and you go to these pavilions and get to see. I know Saf has a lot of experience having to be youth ambassador for whatever he did.
Well, this is something I didn't know, youth ambassador.
And we both danced in our respective pavilions.
I think all of us have our own cultural backgrounds. They play a big part in our lives. And I think musically, whether you're talking about a certain subcontinent's type of music or a certain genre of music within the various sorts of North America, I don't know that any of us consciously say, let's try to make the blues influence felt in this song, or let's try to make the R&B influence. Honestly, that stuff isn't discussed, and if it does creep into our music, then great, because it's what we listen to and what we enjoy, but we don't consciously make that decision, it just happens.
Well, just simply in terms of fair play, Sean, you have I don't know what your ethnic background is, apart from you have the name Sean, which could be Irish, and Vero, which sounds like it could be French. So just so we get it out on the table, what is your ethnic background?
I'm sort of a mix of a whole bunch of things, from French, Canadian, Métis, and I guess Ukrainian. So a whole bunch of different things.
Well, obviously it would be a real work of art to combine all those influences into one piece of music. Let me ask you, talking about influence or what has worked in your music, why did you call your self-released CD The Nazarene? What was the link there?
I thought we would have got asked about that a lot more. Just for anyone because there were only 2,500 of them ever, I think. Before we put out the album that we have out now, we had one that had quite a few of the same songs on it that were recorded in a smaller studio on a farm in Alberta. And picking a name for a thing is really tough, I think, because afterwards you might realize that you branded it with a name that doesn't quite fit. So all of a sudden a dream, I guess, presented itself, and in the dream it really had, now that I think about it, nothing to do with Christianity or Jesus or anything. There was a building in the dream we were playing in. There were all these different rooms I was going in, and strange things were happening. At the very end of it, I went upstairs and watched us play. I was a kind of a spectator at one of our concerts. And
did you enjoy you?
I think I did. It was pretty eerie to watch us, but upon leaving the building, one of those old brick buildings, I looked over top of the door. I kind of looked back to see if we were still playing, I guess, upstairs. And sort of etched into the stone over top of the door was the Nazarene. You know how buildings have like Leamington mansions and stuff like that. So it was right as we were trying to figure out a name for the album, and that was what kind of stuck.
Well, thank you for answering that, because I was wondering. I was sort of amused in reading some background on you to find that now that you started to make it, you're becoming, well-known names. A lot of towns are trying to lay claim to you. So I thought I'd keep up the tradition, and I noticed that some of your music was recorded in Vancouver. How did that come about? Was it Greenhouse Studios? How did that come about?
Yeah, that's the one. Well, on the indie disc that we just mentioned, the person who kind of salvaged all the rough tapes and made it listenable was a person named Joel Van Dyke, who was working almost exclusively at Greenhouse Studios. And then when we signed our record deal and knew that the album would be going out to a lot more people, I think we decided we wanted to bring it more up to speed with where we were live at that point, and also to be able to use a lot of the things that studio had for sound. So we ended up doing it with Joel, and it just happened to be there, and it was a great place to do it. Partly because of how nice everyone was in the studio, and they took really good care of us, but just being away from home and having some different surroundings to go out and see. So.
You've been very lucky, well, maybe not lucky, maybe you've been very skillful in the relationships that you created musically, because it seems to me that your relationship with Warner Music is quite exceptional. Would you agree?
I would agree. I think it's such a strange mix of things to have a career. I guess it's funny to call it a career, but to have a career go positively. And through the whole thing, we've been working and working and working. If it wasn't on the road, it was writing music and doing as many things as we could to make sure we had a hand in everything, be it the business side or the promotional side or everything. But and early on, we surrounded ourselves with people who we knew could handle the job as things grew and grew and grew. But we've also been very lucky that a lot of the times we've been in the right place at the right time, and had opportunities that I honestly don't know where they came from sometimes. Opportunities to play certain festivals or opportunities to do certain things that we've done.
I'd like to come back to that in a second, but in the meantime, one of the things that crossed my mind, as I said, I've been trying to read up on you because I really didn't know a lot about you ahead of time. And one of the things I found, there's an awful lot of material out there about how you work in performance, but I didn't see one thing about how you work creatively. How does that process happen? I mean, who writes the words, who writes the music? Do you all write some of each? How does that work?
It's, I think, a different thing every time we step to the table. It's, there's no formula for us. I don't know if there is for other bands, but for sure it isn't that way with us. And some songs are a creation of us just jamming in my basement. Some songs are we're on the road and go to a park and just decide to do acoustic things. Sometimes someone will bring a set of words and we'll write a melody around it. Sometimes someone will come with a melody and we'll write a set of words around it. There's various aspects to it, and we all sort of play different roles depending on the one, and honestly there's no uniform code to it for us.
Now that you're jamming in your basement, has Sean's mum got her pots and pans back?
Yeah, she got it back. She takes good care of it now.
There seems to be an underlying ethic to what you do. One of the critics described, actually I don't know whether it's a critic or it's in your bio information, described your music as heart-wrenchingly honest. And I noticed a quote from Safi somewhere saying that music's not supposed to be about showing off, it's supposed to be about sending a message or expressing yourself. Do you always agree on what the message is that you're sending, and what is that message?
Well, I think it's kind of, if you can step out and look at it through our perspective, which is we're actually in this band, so it's hard for us to be able to like sit out and watch us and see what we want. But we're also music fans, so that lends us to be able to look at things through different perspective, and sort of we see live shows and we listen to music that does something for us. And I wouldn't want to be up there playing and not playing hard for the people that are there to see us play, because it's not honest, or not enjoying playing while you're on stage. Some people are doing it, not enjoying it. So I think that's where the honesty comes into play. If you're not having fun, and if it's not fun, then you better stop.
Or even if it's not for a fun thing, even if it's a negative thing, but it's your honest expression, fair enough. I mean, to each his or her own. I think the three of us would all agree that for us, there are certain things that do overlap in terms of message, and that message may not always be overt. It may not be something that anyone can pick up on, but it's between the three of us. We all want to improve as musicians. We all want to improve as a band playing together. We all want to improve as human beings. And then within the music, there's different subtler messages that I think each of us may interpret differently at different times too. I might think something 1 month, 2 months later, or a month later, it's completely different for me.
Hold that thought, I'll come back to that. But I mean, what you're saying makes sense because it's human nature. I was talking with the Nylons not too long ago, and one of the things that they said was that not everybody can be in a group because there is a need to compromise. What have you guys had to compromise in order to make this work, if anything?
Well, you can call it compromising, or you can call it collaborating. I guess. I mean, even within the band, there might be. I might hear a song a certain way and think, I think the bass line should go like this. And then Earl will play something and I'll go, I was completely wrong, And someone could call that compromise, or you could call it working together as a group. And you have your ideas about how things are going to go, and then you end up making it something you can all live with and surprise each other.
And the more everyday tangible side of it is you spend hours, days, weeks, months together, 24 hours a day on the road, and you better be able to compromise and give each other space, because otherwise you can't do it.
Here's a strange question. Are you guys wealthy yet?
We're wealthy in terms of the amount of debt we have.
Well, I asked for a very particular reason. I tended to think of you as introducing you as a band with a social conscience. And in the course of your short career, you've donated the proceeds from some of your concerts, and I've got a list here, to the Saskatoon Food Bank, Friends of the Castle Theatre, victims of the Red River flooding, and most recently this year to the victims of the big ice storm back in Quebec. That's a pretty impressive record. I don't know that there's a question in there, but anybody like to comment on that?
I think Sean mentions this quite often, that, people like to make a point of it and like to, heap praises on us, saying, that's so generous of you, that's so... And really, all we're doing is playing music. It's these people that don't get the recognition for it, that organize those things, that set that up, that make it so that it can happen, that see that people need help and do what they can to make that happen, and bring us to places to play, or whatever, bring anything that they can in. to create, resources for those people in trouble. Those people deserve credit. For us, I say this lots, Sean uses the word one-trick pony. This is what we do, and this is what we're most experienced at, and this is what we consider ourselves relatively experienced at. So if we can use this to help someone, then there ain't nothing wrong with that, because a lot of people have helped us in terms of allowing us to do this as a career.
Well, I think that's a very creditable statement. We'll let that one rest there. I want to ask you about something which I thought sounded really interesting, your trip to Montreux. I think you were described as being the find of the festival.
Well, the way the whole thing came about and what it turned out to be is just I don't think it's even set in yet, and it was last July that it happened, but there was this one day that I was in New York at our record company Atlantic there, and one day that the organizer of the Montreux Jazz Festival was in from Switzerland. And we happened to be introduced by one of the founders of Atlantic and hit it off. Before I knew it, he had the itinerary of the show saying, why don't you come? Which night would you like to play on? And then to have a few months later us show up and see some of our favorite performers and have our minds blown. And then even beyond that, to be able to get on the same stage as them. And even beyond that, for the crowd to be so nice to us. And that was the first time I've ever been to Europe. And to have it go the way it did, being able to share the stage and just sit in awe of some of the musicians we saw there was really quite something.
An incredible experience. I think it would have been worth it
that week.
Yeah,
sure.
It would have been worth it for us
so
not to play
people.
and just to watch the shows that we watched.
I don't want to sound like a kid talking about a field trip going, it was really educational and everything, but seriously, the diversity and the amount of stuff that we saw.
I don't think we could have handpicked if we had been able to choose the people playing, if we could have done a better job.
I don't think we could have.
You were invited to sit in on one gig and couldn't make it because you were busy.
Well, yeah, that was the stars were completely in alignment except for that one thing. But
if Van would have asked me to play, I would have been there. Man. With the bells on.
Well, what happened was the day after we played, we were anxious to go watch Van Morrison and Ray Charles, who were doing a double bill. That speaks about what kind of festival it was. And we had been driving around Switzerland all day, checking out different places, because like I said, we'd never been there. And when we got back to the hotel, there was a message from someone saying that Van Morrison saw a video of our performance and would like if I could come sit in on guitar. By the time we ran, Earl and I packed up a guitar and ran from our hotel, like literally the whole way to the theater. He had already gone on, so there wasn't a chance to talk it over. But we did get to hang out with him for a little while. And he was, what do you say when you're in a room with Van Morrison? It was just kind of us saying, wow, how have you done it for so long? And he just seemed so down to earth, and he was, I don't know, just take lots of breaks.
Well, that's not the only big name. I'm dating myself, but one of the names that I saw that you've opened for that sort of raised my eyebrows is the Rolling Stones. Surely it doesn't get much better than that, does it? Until they're opening for you, I guess.
The two that you've mentioned, Montreux and the Stones, every time we play, it's somewhat of a surreal experience. There's always something to take away from it, always somewhere to grow with it. Those two in particular probably stand out the most just because of the immensity of the situation and the so-called legendary status of the people at hand. And we've been asked, we were just talking about on the plane how many times we've been asked about the Stones thing, and there's only so much you can say. It was truly all in the experience, and that's all I can leave it at. It was immense and professional and the way things should be done for concerts.
And it was well catered. The food was awesome.
Yes, I'm sure that, you guys are too modest, but it does indicate to me that somewhere along the line that people are going to be sort of sitting there saying, hey, we actually got to play with Wide Mouth Mason, can you believe that? These things are comparative, but you're probably a couple of years away from that, maybe 6 months. Safi, I want to come back to something which is a little more somber. Some time ago, you had a columnist called Sean Ola spent some time with you. And one of the quotes that I lifted from his piece that I thought, I must find out about that was, and I quote directly, I don't know what is going to happen to me. I used to think the music was enough for me, but there are many things I'm tired of.
See what steady road work will do to you?
7 months later, you're still here. Where are you now?
People are complex mechanisms, and I can only speak from my own experience. I'm an extremely complex mechanism which I don't understand myself. At that point in time, I was extremely homesick. We've been on the road for months and months and months, and the only times they never even went home because they're tougher than me. So, I'm more of a mama's boy, I guess. I'd take off every 2 days that I could. If there's a 2-day break, I'd go home and fly back on my own money. I didn't care. I needed to go back and sort of rejuvenate. It was just, he caught me at a point where I was trying to decide a lot of things, where I was trying to see, is this what I want? I'm getting sick and tired of constantly in and out of a bus, in and out of hotel rooms, always eating out at restaurants, always in a club, always smoking, always doing this and that. You know what I mean? Like, just the whole lifestyle got to be too much of a burden. And what happened was, it also said in that article that we sat and had a closed meeting with just us. It was also strange to have a journalist with us 24 hours a day. But we sat down and had a meeting between the three of us and one of our close friends. And I came out of that completely rejuvenated. And I'm perhaps not at liberty to say what went on in that meeting because that's something that's between brothers. But regardless,
it's like in a marriage.
I'm still here.
People don't talk, and what their problems is. You keep it all in, and it was a long time. Everyone was keeping in what we wanted to say. There's some weird communication breakdown, and to have that sort of open forum made it so, like you said, I'm still here 7 months from then, and I guarantee you I'll be here a long time.
Now we just
look on the internet. You can check. It freaked me out. I looked at our tour schedule for '97, and there was 2 days of every month where we weren't doing anything.
Yes, I think that's one of the...
It was like way busier than I'd even imagined.
One of the worst aspects of what it is you do. Everything has to be rushed into such a short space of time. Time is running out. Yes, however.
I mean, some people thrive on it. Yeah. Some people like having something to do all the time and like being on the road all the time. So you find a balance.
Listen, you guys have got a show to do and a sound check coming up for another group, but I don't want to go without a couple of things. One of which is, now that your original CD is so well established, everybody, I'm sure, is waiting for another one. When is that going to happen?
We're waiting to do another one.
We're planning to get into the studio within a few months, maybe fall. Right now we have a short list of producers that we're trying to come to grips with to see who's going to do it. And after all the label work is done, probably by early next year. And just as you said, we're just as excited as anyone else. In fact, maybe more so.
Last question. You guys have been very modest about the people you played with and the accolades you received. When will you feel that you've made it?
See, that's the thing. I think about 3 years ago, it would have been too much to bear, but that's my catchphrase for this one these days. We've seen the Emperor naked. It's like you get behind the scenes a little bit and you realize that it's amazing that the Rolling Stones have done everything they've done, but when you see them at soundcheck, they're 4 skinny Brits or whatever that are like around the middle of the stage playing, and you realize it comes down to people playing music, and the kind of the glitz and glam has gone from me, and I'm now more impressed by character in people. I'm in awe of Eric Clapton, not because he can play guitar really well, but because of all the things he's gone through and how human he's remained.
So, with your comment about making it, I don't know what making it means, but a lot of people ask us, now that you're successful now. For us, I think success was never about a certain number of record sales or a certain number on a chart that we made it to, or a song got to a certain hit level. For us, it was when all three of us came to the decision, yes, this is what we want to do with our lives, let's do it together.
That and being able to eat every day and not have to have another job apart from music, it's been really nice.
There's going to be low times in the future. The longer we stay together, there's going to be high times. If we're still standing after it all and still playing, then I know we're successful.
Well, if I'm any judge of character and of music, you guys are going to be around for a long time, and I hope we get the chance to talk next time.
Thank you very much.
In the meantime, thanks very much for this.
Enjoy the show.
To be a fool, cause they don't got no more room for him in school. And everybody wanna know why I sing my blues. Said I've been around a long time, said I'm gonna pay my dues. Can we do this one more? Said I went down to get myself some grits and stuff. A woman, she come around to me, said you ain't